load shedding was a catalyst event for South Africa. Large industry immediately started developing energy efficiency, doing simple things like changing the light bulb, which already started to make them more efficient, reduce demand unnecessarily. But before that, we'd been talking about energy efficiency for years. I mean, Eskom had an energy efficiency department. We have the energy efficiency drives that were being run by the productivity center, and that nobody was taking,
right? Demand side
exactly,
management.
nobody was taking it seriously till the problem came home.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of Dealmaker Diary. Today, I'm honored to be with Kiren Maharaj, the chairperson of the South African National Energy Association, or SANEA, and founder and CEO of Trenex. Kiren, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Kiren, a bit about your backstory. Why did I always think, and I've known you for many years, why did I think you're from Durban, like me?
Very stereotypical that all Indians come from Durban, but I'm very happy to say that I come from Newcastle in KwaZulu-Natal. Actually, it's a kind of midway between Durban and Johannesburg, so I'm not sure why we don't get associated with being from Johannesburg. But nevertheless, grew up in Newcastle and left many years ago to come to Johannesburg for job, career, and growth reasons, I guess.
Yeah, Newcastle is not on the N3, so it often gets forgotten.
True.
Are there any famous people from Newcastle?
Yeah, definitely. Obviously, the ANC stalwart, Mac Maharaj, comes from Newcastle. I believe there's a little tribute to his home that's now being preserved as well, so that's good. And then something very interesting, so Ryder Haggard, the author of the King Solomon Mines and Alan Quatermain series, he actually had a stint where he lived in Newcastle. And his home is still being preserved as part of a lodge. So if you ever stay there in Newcastle, might be a nice place to go and just reflect on that bit of history. Okay. But a beautiful little town, associated, I think, not 100% accurately with being a coal mining town. That's quite historical. But it's quite the hub of industry in northern KwaZulu-Natal. So obviously the big ArcelorMittal plant, and there used to be quite a few other heavy industries in Newcastle. Challenges at the moment, with ArcelorMittal, with other industries and that. But yeah, we're reading some positive news around a wind farm that's being developed and that. So hopefully it gets back up and running and continues to be the hub for northern KwaZulu-Natal.
Awesome, good. So growing up, your career or your academic arc was BCom to UNISA, then you did your MBA through WITS. But take me back to, what did young Kiren want to be?
I'm not sure what I wanted to be, and maybe I shouldn't say because I perhaps not what I wanted to be, but I'm happy with what I am, if I can say that. But I think having some kind of an academic qualification was always very important to me. Growing a career, being in something mainstream and doing, using my talent and my potential and delivering good results and outcomes was always important. I think, my career success was always perhaps in the beginning the blueprint. You go to school, you do well, you go to university, you get a degree, you find a good job, and we somehow always think that every one of us is going to end up being at the helm of a company. But simple maths will tell you that's not possible. But we all have those dreams and aspirations. Certainly mine's had some cars in it and some travel and, those kind of ambitions as well. But yeah, I mean, I've been on a long journey, and my biggest lesson has been that success is not a destination. In fact, the greatest joys I have found and the greatest satisfaction has come to me from the journey. The little moments that make the big moments even more worthwhile. The people you meet along the way, people who add meaning to your life, being able to find who's in your corner, who's your tribe, those are some of the more meaningful things that my journey has given me. And that's what I kind of define as success. But yes, at 18, I didn't know that.
Right. Okay. So you and I worked in the early 2000s together at Eskom. Interesting time. I remembered you being this young, dynamic leader, and pretty young for a role that you took on, head of primary energy. Not too long after, I think you were production manager at one point, or
in the power generation clusters.
yes, correct. And then you went into heading up and doing procurement deals for coal worth billions, right? But then there was a time that you went through and where you had to say no to some really powerful people. What was that like in terms of the lesson, and how did that shape you?
Well, I think it tests you. Being able to stand up for who you are and what you value is a great test. And at the end of the day, how you come out of that test, in my opinion, is left solely to you. And I know that life has different drivers and everybody sees these things differently. But for me, and maybe one has to grow and learn out of these things. But right and wrong is black and white. Sometimes it's gray. But there's sometimes when it's black and white, and you need to know what's the difference. You also need to understand very clearly the consequences of the choices that you make. And if at any point your choice is going to give you sleepless nights, you shouldn't be making it. Nobody is going to come and fill those gaps for you. The nurturing your soul from the damage you cause from doing those things is going to be your journey to heal. So you must always make sure that you put yourself in a situation where you can heal what from the choices you're making, where you can thrive from the choices you're making. So for me, it was a challenge. I mean, you often find yourself very alone. In a business, you find yourself alone in the tough times, and you find yourself with a lot of company in the good times, and you have to discern between the two. And it doesn't necessarily feel nice, but your life's path is not everybody else's journey. And that's something you need to also understand. You have to have the courage to stand in these situations on your own, as difficult as it is. Maybe your support system is different. It's not at work, it's at home, it's your dogs, it's your family, whatever it is. Yeah. But you've got a different support system in these difficult times. But you need a support system so that you can stand up for what you believe is right. And for me, it's quite simple. As I said, if I'm not going to sleep at peace at night, if it's going to bother me, it's going to worry me, I'm going to have regrets about it, then those are the choices I should not be making. So I don't regret the choice that I made.
Good. At the end of the day, you got to sleep well at night, eh?
Very true.
And recharge your batteries.
Yes.
Right. Let's give our audience a bit of context, right? It was the time that we South Africans know as the state capture period. It was quite a challenging time. The state-owned enterprises were the targets for this capture, and you were in this executive role, at Eskom. It was you must have heard in these meeting rooms and exco some utterances that would make your skin crawl. Maybe want to share one or two that you may have some flags?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of things that make your skin crawl, and it's a big challenge, because the difficulty is being able to see what is actually contributing to what you've got, the issue at hand, or the problem that is being discussed, or the solution that's being put on the table, versus, where are the steps, different steps, the steps that are leading you towards a different path. And sometimes fortunate things are quite blatant. You'll be told straight, like, there's this company, why aren't you doing business with them? They're not even on your radar screen, and you're wondering, why is this conversation even happening? But other times it's subtle. There's a subtle erosion of your authority, your power, people questioning things that they shouldn't be questioning, asking you to rethink your processes, which have stood the test of time and helped you to deliver results ethically and without recourse. So those are the signs you have to look for, and they're not easy. I think, and the other challenge is different people in the room, different signs. There's no constants. Right. So I think that
it's not a consistent flag.
Yeah, it's not one question that's going to be asked, or one comment that's going to be made. Only time gives you this whole toolbox of different comments, and then you almost become sensitized to them, that in other conversations now you start listening for those words and listening for that track of thinking, and then you can start putting the pieces together. But the one anchor for me as a person was always, if I do this, what is the consequence? Yeah. If I do this, who can I still stand accountable for what I believe in, what I have put in place, and what we have all sanctioned as right for this entity?
And that's very different to saying, what would people think if they found out, isn't it? Than to say, how would I feel about signing off on this? It's a different, internal versus an external locus of control.
So, being found out is almost, I'm going to get disciplined, I'm going to get fired, I'm going to have criminal charges put against me. That's the external perspective. But your value system is about being right with you, being right with your soul, being right with your maker, if you believe in those things, being right with the universe. And I've had one test for myself personally. I always ask the question, would I be able to tell my parents I did this? Because I consider them as a people that brought me into this world, and I'm kind of very aligned to the values they taught me. And would they be proud of me? Would they be embarrassed by what I'm saying? And that was for me, for me still today, a big test. The people closest to me, would they be proud of what, or would they turn on and ask me, where did you get this from? Why are you making this choice? And that for me is a test. And that's being right with yourself, right to my own value system. People, I've read this, you read this quite often. People will judge you and talk about you, whether you do good things or whether you do bad things, So you have to step out of that world, living where what people think matters. Obviously, when you're in an organization, you must do your work properly, you must deliver credibly, you must build up a reputation for who you are, and you are going to be assessed in that way to see, where your potential lies, what opportunities you can be given, and that's different from being continuously worried about being judged by people. There's another side when these kind of things happen, is you want to be in the popular room. Okay, there's a price to be paid, and if you don't know what that price is, then I would say don't go into the room. You must be very clear when you walk into these type of environments, what you're putting there and what you're giving up.
Because you're paying a price, almost selling your soul in some cases, to be popular.
There truly is no such a thing as a free lunch.
I like what you said about what would your parents think. It made me think about my late dad always said, your name is the most valuable thing you own. Treat it like gold.
Absolutely.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Who you are is all you have. It's all you bring into this world and all you take with you.
Awesome. Any regrets from having said no? And the Zondo Commission, although cleared you in terms of you were doing your job. I mean, after they suspended you, and you were managing costs, exactly what you were employed to do as the head of primary energy. Was that sort of like vindication for you? How did that make you feel?
Well, there's no doubt about it. People always cast suspicious eyes on you. And vindication really helps with those kind of things. That now there's a factual base of what you did and what you didn't do, or how you're being held accountable or not. So that's what it always helps with. But, my first step in the journey was to make this right with myself. And, I think of the first day it happened, and I think of today. And you ask me, do I have any regrets? My answer is comprehensively and absolutely no.
Good. Fantastic. Now, you built an internal energy trading and auctioning system at Eskom, which is quite innovative, right? For that time.
It's so interesting. I often tell people in the industry, for me, this, we're busy, the industry is busy, Eskom, the NTCSA is busy rolling out the South African wholesale electricity market. It's such a good feeling because it almost feels like the circle has closed. And, I know that every morning there's a different feeling about Eskom in the country. One day we hate them, one day we love them. But Eskom has always been a front runner in many aspects. You've worked there and you know this, whether it's technology, whether it's process, whether it's the interventions, etc. So when the European and American markets started to move away from the centralized, the vertically integrated utility model, that was state-owned and bring in private participation. They introduced competitive electricity markets. And in Eskom, internally, we decided we need to prepare for this scenario. So we ran the simulation exercise where generation traded with the power pool, which was administered and run by the transmission team at the time. Obviously, from a regulation perspective, we still had our wholesale electricity pricing and the hedging and that kind of thing in place. But we used it as an opportunity to practice. What would we be doing when a market came? It was absolute fun. It was absolute fun. It was a massive amount of learning. And I venture to say, if we didn't, the leadership at the time didn't have the courage to put this model in place to allow this kind of thing. And yeah, some mistakes were made, silly things happened, but essentially, there was courage to put this thing in place. And there's no better learning than practical real-time learning. You can sit behind as many simulations as you can, but when you're sitting in a room, you're taking real facts and circumstances into consideration. That's the greatest learning you can ever have. And that was just something awesome. I might be getting my dates wrong here, but in the early 2000s, we even had a whole industry team with players from government, other industry associations, Eskom, etc., develop a blueprint for an electricity market. And then with all the challenges that came up, capacity crisis and things like that, it got shelved. Somebody dumped it somewhere. And I'm so glad to see that it's back on the table. Yeah. And that expertise that we invested in many, many years ago is coming to the fore.
That's having a generation running like a business and, serving its customer, transmission, and then transmission running like a business, serving distribution. But having said that, people, I always say, they say, okay, you ruined, now Eskom has been ruined by the new government. I said, no. It was also the time when 300,000 homes were being electrified a year that didn't have access to power. Yeah? So there's a reason why we were sitting with excess capacity then, because only an elite few were getting energy.
We're not as widely distributed as they are now. I mean, if you look at the statistics about the African continent, where more than half of Africa has no access to a sustainable source of energy, South Africa does not fall in that bracket. We have electrification specifically at, I think, over 90%, if it's still that much, which I think it is. There's obviously some gaps, and those gaps have a lot to do with technical constraints about last mile power to some very rural communities and that. But things like microgrids and that is giving alternative solutions for those kind of problems. So it's been, there's definitely elements of what is happening to Eskom that should never have happened in the first place. But I also just want to say this, not everything that happened at Eskom was bad. So I have a different take on load shedding.
Yeah.
Might be very controversial, but load shedding was a catalyst event for South Africa. Large industry immediately started developing energy efficiency, doing simple things like changing the light bulb, which already started to make them more efficient, reduce demand unnecessarily. But before that, we'd been talking about energy efficiency for years. I mean, Eskom had an energy efficiency department. We have the energy efficiency drives that were being run by the productivity center, and that nobody was taking,
right? Demand side
exactly
management.
Nobody was taking it seriously till the problem came home. So in as much as load shedding caused huge havoc, I do not deny, my comment is not made in the absence of understanding the negative consequences. Let's put some of the positives on the table. The impetus to bring renewable energy into the country through private power producers was hastened by load shedding. Okay, today one of the biggest levers in economic growth in South Africa and development is the renewable energy program. And it came out of this dire need. And the need was never dire when power generation was taken for granted. So you needed this big catalyst event to bring everybody to the realization that when you switch your light, switch the switch on in your home, things don't happen automatically. You have to make conscious decisions to keep that in place. And I think that too, for me, is one of the big positives that came out of load shedding.
Fantastic. Look, you're one of the, in my view, the preeminent thought leaders in the energy sector. And that is why you chair SANEA, right?
Yeah, thank you.
I want to, tell me about that. What excites you in this role?
So just a little bit of history. I won't say the oldest, but South Africa, SANEA is one of the oldest energy associations in the country. It's 102 years old. It had a very long-standing history with the World Energy Council. In fact, South Africa was one of the founding nations of what today is the World Energy Council. SANEA was a member for the longest of times. Due to some economic challenges, we terminated our membership. But I'm very happy to say the Energy Council has taken the membership on again. So South Africa is back into that fold, which I think is great for the country. But it already starts to tell you, it was very much about Eskom, it was very much about power. In 1924, when the World Energy Congress was formed and South Africa was invited, Europe was reeling from the effects of World War I and looking to rebuild its infrastructure. And imagine this small little country down south was considered empowered and knowledgeable and expert to be able to contribute to those discussions, and we are put into that fold.
Wow.
So the recognition of what we did in the power sector in this country is not new. You talked about the Power Company of the Year award. I would say that recognition started a long time before that. Again, due to the great insight and foresight of leadership, in the 80s it was recognized that energy is not about power generation. There's the many other facets to energy. So SANEA was moved out of Eskom and made standalone. And that's how the South African National Energy Association in its form today was developed. So we look at all forms of energy. It's not just power generation, but it's energy used for power generation, energy used standalone, gas, liquid fuels, nuclear, water, the new forms of energy, wind, solar, green hydrogen. Everything is on the table for consideration. So we don't really support any single technology. We support the use of energy to grow South Africa's economy, to make the country more prosperous. And what we do is bring thought leadership, critical assessment, studies, analysis, cutting edge thinking to the energy debate in the country without preferring any one specific item, but looking at broadly and in an integrated fashion how energy can make the country greater. How we can grow the economy, develop societies, and make South Africans more prosperous. I think that's the bottom line energy agenda.
Yeah. I mean, and energy is foundational, right? Without energy, there's no industry. Without industry, there's no economy. So now this podcast and this channel, Kiren, is directed particularly for the young, aspiring leaders and founders and entrepreneurs. Through the work you're doing with SANEA, you've changed this narrative of the tragedy story of the energy, South African energy sector to what a big opportunity it is. Yeah, for the youngsters listening, where would you direct them in terms of seeing the opportunity?
So firstly, the energy sector is extremely exciting and extremely complex. Okay, and if you really think about it, there's nothing that we touch on a daily basis that doesn't have something with energy, whether it's the water flowing, whether it's your car moving, whether it's your own self, yourself as a person.
Yes.
We are surrounded by energy all the time.
Yeah.
We've just looking at how you can apply all those different forms of energy for greater use. So there's so many different opportunities. And I think where the youth has a great area to make a contribution is to look at things differently. So we also need to recognize that some things are not going to change. We may not even want to make the effort to change it, because if you take a coal-fired power station, I think AI and new technology and that can help to an extent, but to make massive modifications to infrastructure that has a 5-year life doesn't make economic sense, and nobody wins from it. But so there are those things, and we must never detract from the climate change imperative. I think it's critical to us as a race and to this planet in terms of its existence. So we mustn't detract from that, but we must be balanced in terms, of our approach. So where are the opportunities for young people? All of these new technologies, all of these new ideas, the synergy between digitization and old school technology, analog type technology, that different world.
Yeah.
Where are those synergies? And I think the benefit that the younger generation has is if you are 2 years old and you can use a cell phone. We learned when we were much older, and you still ask your 10-year-old nephew to help you set up your phone. They have this affinity to breed that kind of thinking, that different technological thinking
The
into
digital
the fold.
natives.
Yes, they did. And where we sit and look at a problem, and we can't see how the two come together, I think intuitively they would be able to see it much better. And that's the value that they can add. However, I just want to say that it can't be in the absence of understanding the foundations of energy.
Yeah.
Because the principles don't change. Those principles, they go beyond Newton. They go to creation. And if you don't understand the principles of energy, I think you can't make these cutting edge decisions. So in as much as the youth are bringing in something, at this level when it comes to AI, digitization, modernization, new thinking, etc., there's a long history that goes behind it that needs to be synergized into a future.
Right.
And I think that is something very critical. I think there's also a big emergence of smaller rather than larger, decentralized rather than centralized. And that in itself creates a lot more opportunities.
What does that mean?
Okay, so we don't have to actually, there's distributed energy systems. Because things are not so capital intensive anymore, you can do them on a smaller scale. So you can build a smaller power plant. You can, even things like hydropower generation, you can do small scale. You don't have to do large scale. You find different sources of water, different ways to use them, for example. Again, I know I'm talking a lot about power generation, but I think even in gas and that, there's a lot of opportunities for distributed gas. I mean, you look at all of these small businesses that have popped up where you've got these little containers with gas supply and scooters delivering them into the residential areas, and that it's a lot of those different thinkings. We don't have to be Sasol and Eskom and Total and Astron to be a player.
Yep.
Okay, obviously they are going to be the big players. They provide stability to the industry. They create an attractive investment environment, so they contribute very positively to it. But increasingly, there is that emergence of opportunities for smaller businesses.
Before we go on, I should tell you, I started this channel to share the real stories behind the climb for the next generation of leaders and builders coming up. Now, if that's something you believe in too, please subscribe and come along for the ride. It's free and it means a lot. Okay, let's continue. It seems to be very popular now to play in the renewable energy space, right? And you always said this, the just transition is not an overnight situation. It's quite a complex thing. And we practically live on a coal mine and our power is 90% coal, right? So there's still going to be coal mining. There's still going to be opportunities there in that space. There's still going. Any advice on? Because what I want to also say to them is, don't ignore our bread and butter, which is coal-fired power generation.
I feel like I think there's this very strong push to decommission the coal power stations. But the problem is a lot more complex. There's a whole network infrastructure that runs off the way the coal-fired plant has been structured. It creates the environment of high quality supply, of stable supply, etc. So it's not so easy to just dismantle this whole system overnight. And the characteristics of renewable energy and baseload coal-fired power generation, which can also come from another hydrocarbon fuel, for example, like gas, it's better for the environment, but doesn't solve the problem completely. However, there is a need for that kind of power. Renewable energy is not, it's intermittent power. I mean, you get solar PV when the sun shines, you get wind when the wind blows. You can put storage to it, but there's economics around that as well. There's scale and things like that. So that's where everything kind of becomes complex, and you need to understand the integrated picture. There's a critical mineral strategy that was developed by the Department of Minerals and Petroleum. And it's an important document because it gives South Africa in my mind, two distinctive trajectories of growth. So there's all these critical minerals for new energy technology that we have. We're fairly rich in, okay? And there's the need to exploit it. But, there's been those conversations happening for years and years and years about exporting unbeneficiated ore from this country. Okay, and that's a big opportunity. Instead of just taking something out of the ground, what can we do to add value rather than send it to another country where they add value in it? So we'll be missing out on all the value and profitability that comes from beneficiation. So those are also opportunities. However, we have a vast coal reserve, and coal is like a swear word, right? I mean, and rightfully so. If you don't control the emissions, whether it's CO2, whether it's ash, etc., it's not a fuel that you can just take out of the ground and use. But where's the innovation in controlling the consequences? Because rather than say don't burn the fuel, have we deeply interrogated the issue of how do we mitigate the consequences? We take dipsticks, let's do whatever sinks for CO2. Well, Eskom has put in a lot of technology to reduce SOx, NOx, particles, etc. Is it enough? Is there different ways of doing it? Everything is getting so modern. Why is that static? I keep asking myself that question. I don't know the answer, but it plays on my mind. I mean, I look at medical science, for example. Now they can do surgery on you without making a cut. Okay, and it comes from people's thinking and investment in that kind of
how to innovate.
Cutting edge technology, right? Where's the same level of innovation and thinking around making this usable, mitigating the consequences? And if it doesn't come out of South Africa, it's not coming from anywhere else, because we sit with one of the larger coal ore bodies in the world.
That's a fantastic opportunity for young entrepreneurs. How to help us burn coal more safely, more sustainably, more environment. Yeah.
And maybe the answer is no, we can never do it.
Right.
Happiness, we've explored sufficiently. But my question is,
it's a problem statement.
It's a pain point. It's a pain point. And it's been a pain point for years. And we've talked about, carbon capture and storage. We've talked about sequestration. We've talked about better emission control. We talked about so many different things. I mean, conversations, talks, and putting the issues on the table don't answer questions.
Absolutely.
And what is the fundamental reason we can't do it?
Let's find out. I don't know.
I'm putting it out there. I think we haven't thought it through enough. And the fact of the matter is, we're not going to get away from coal in the next 2 to 3 years, as much as we'd love to say that,
2 to 3 decades, if you ask me.
Maybe even more. Maybe even more. Because the bottom line is this: there's a consequence to doing all this. We've just, as Sanya, we're doing some interesting work on how to look at reskilling and upskilling when you close down, coal-fired power plants and the mines that go with it, and that. And it's a wonderfully necessary work. We're doing it in partnership with the ILO, and it's wonderfully fantastic work.
Who's the ILO?
International Labour Organization, and it's not just for South Africa. It's a tool that can be used globally. So it's wonderful, to be able to go to those different steps of thinking around addressing this problem. But that is already making the assumption that we're closing down the stations. I'm asking a question before that. Have we sufficiently invested in looking at how we can use this sustainably, or even make the current plants more sustainable, do different things to make them sustainable? Yes. And I think if you don't ask those questions, you're never going to look for the answers.
Yeah, you'll believe just transitioning means how to close the mine, close the power station. Yeah. And which isn't the case. And, countries like Germany and others have learned some very big lessons from doing that. So I'm glad that you're asking these challenging questions as the chair, which is great leadership. And I know you stand for leadership and leadership development. It's something we both are very passionate about. And Sanya's got the annual leadership symposium coming up in September.
Yes, on the 9th and 10th of September.
Right. Tell us about that.
So, as an energy association, we obviously need platforms to bring thinking and, encourage discourse and discussion in the sector. So we typically used to have a conference every year, and from about 3 years ago, we decided to refocus. So there's a lot of technical conversations happening, and they're very necessary. But where does leadership play a role here? Leaders are the people who take ambition, thought, ideas, and make them reality. And I must qualify that I'm not talking about the manager, the CEO of an organization. I'm talking about people who can lead in the field that they are in. That's leadership, right? So whether you are the entry-level engineer running a project, or whether you are the CEO of the company, we have leaders distributed throughout the company based on the characteristics that they show. So I'm not talking about a can role of leadership. I'm talking about being able to lead. That is translating ideas and thoughts into action, into deliverables. And that's what we want to focus on. So we flipped the script on the symposium a little, in a few ways. So the first one is taking the conversation out of technical into leadership, but not ignoring technical, because we know that it is the technical, the environmental, the financial solutions and that we're talking about implementing to move the sector forward, right? So we're not completely divorced, but we're looking at the leadership aspects that would make those things tangible outcomes. So we kicked this model off in 2024 and it went off well. And we started to introduce another aspect that where I think we flipped the script a lot. So the Sanya Symposium is not a symposium for people who only want to come and listen to other people talk. The Sanya Symposium is a platform for you as an attendee to contribute your diverse thinking, your ideas, your views into this debate. So rather than confine our conversations to the experts sharing their knowledge, the platform is created for the attendees to share back their knowledge, their experience, their ideas, their thoughts, ask their critical questions to the experts, maybe prompting things in their minds as well. So it's a two-way conversation. In fact, it's more about the participants than the experts. And make no mistake, we bring a fantastic lineup of experts, not only from the energy sector, because that's another differentiator. There are many industries in this country that are thriving, maybe even more than the energy sector, or many businesses as single entities, where people have taken risk, put new models together, etc. We need to learn from that as well. How did they make those things successful? What questions did they ask? What approaches did they take? So that's another differentiator. It's not only energy people talking to energy people. It's other people coming into people from diverse sectors, different sectors, coming and bringing their thoughts to bear. So last year we asked the critical question, what will your energy legacy be? And we recorded all the contributions from all of the attendees, and in 2040 we'll open the time capsule and reflect on what we wanted to do and whether we've achieved what we wanted to do. So this year, to take legacy into action, we're starting with, I think, a very critical aspect of leadership, which is building resilience and agility into what we do. So resilient by design, building it in so that we can absorb shocks, but also creating systems where shocks are a part of the learning. That shocks actually make the system better, the whole anti-fragility concept. So that's the conversation that we want to have for this year, 9th and 10th of September. I think it's really going to be cutting edge, and this is what we want to do as Sanya, bring these different views onto the table, different ways of doing things. We also use the symposium as an opportunity to network, build relationships. So sitting in the room are entry-level professionals and CEOs of companies.
Are there any SMEs there?
Yes.
Is there space for SMEs?
There's a space for SMEs. In fact, last year, through the sponsorship of 2 entities, we managed to run a concerted effort to bring 10 SMEs into the room and 5 youth for free. So they don't have to pay for the tickets, courtesy of entities who see their role and importance in these conversations. They were sponsored to attend.
Good. So this year, are you doing something similar?
Yes, we're looking for sponsorship. We're looking for support, partnering. We've also changed the sponsorship model differently, where we're willing to look at what would add value to the sponsor themselves and see how we can incorporate that funding and those opportunities into what we do.
Where can our audience see what happened last year? Is there any material online? Or
there is on our website. There have been some shares on LinkedIn, Facebook. As I said, we've also got the website, the Sanya NPC website. And I think our LinkedIn page is also fairly active with these kind of things.
Okay, good. And they can reach out through that if they're interested in attending in September.
Yes, absolutely.
Thinking about the SMEs. So if a 20-something-year-old out there wants to start either a career or a business in the energy sector, what, according to Kiren, should be the first 3 moves? to think about?
Well, I think firstly, know the sector. We talked a lot earlier on about understanding energy. So you want to be in the energy sector, you must understand energy. You don't have to be an expert in everything.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're also going to select a direction in terms of, maybe this is my idea or this is the area that I want to be in. But be knowledgeable about it. Read. I think you probably had a similar experience. Those hours and hours we spent in a library flipping through pages. You don't have to do that these days. You just type the question to ask Claude, ask Gemini, ask this person, this platform. But, having said that, knowledge is what enables you to discern when Claude is not telling you the truth or when Claude is not telling you what sound, when Claude's logic is not generally the logic that should be applied to a problem, right?
Yeah. Or you gotta have the knowledge to prompt AI the right way.
So if you don't have a baseline, you don't understand the basics, you can't ask those questions.
Yes.
So there is that synergy between how AI is developing and growing and why the human still needs to kind of have some input and thought into it. So make sure that that is something you do. But I think coming in, understanding what you want to do, understanding the business, the sector that you want to be in is important. My second piece of advice is how you pitch up, who you are, where you show up, and what you leave behind when you show up is left entirely up to you, not anybody else. Okay. Now, I do appreciate, you may want to speak on a platform, you need somebody's permission, authority. You won't always get those platforms. So it's also not feasible to plan your career and your growth around aspirations that are not real and not pragmatic. I say, doesn't matter which room you are in. If today you're in a room taking minutes, it's an opportunity for you to demonstrate who you are. Deliver them well. And I'm using this minutes example because it's a personal experience. I wasn't a senior leader in the company, but I wasn't a secretary. And I got asked to take minutes in a meeting. And I said, yes, absolutely, I will take the minutes. And one of my colleagues came and told me, why are you doing a secretary job? I was like, okay, just look at this thing from my eyes. None of you are sitting in a room with the most senior leaders in this business. I get to sit in a room and listen to the thinking of the people who lead us in this part of the business. Okay, I hear all the inside talk. I can't share it. I won't publish it, but it's in my head. I can use it. And so if to get into this room, I have to take the minutes, why not? So I got into the room, I took the minutes. One day I had the courage to put up my hand and make a comment about something. And then I was considered part of the meeting where I was even asked what I think about things.
Wow.
So for me, don't worry about I'm not on this platform or I didn't get invited to this. Show up the best version of yourself in the room that you're in. That's my second piece of advice.
Love it.
My third piece of advice is life is not kind. Life is not kind. The world is not kind. We have things being thrown at us from every which way. Filling your cup is your job. Filling your cup is your job. Being resilient to hearing all the no's, especially in business, all the doors that get shut in your face. Come home, have a good cry, pour yourself a beverage of choice, relax with your family and your dogs or whatever is the thing that boosts you. But filling your cup is your responsibility. And you cannot pour from an empty cup. So you must make sure that you keep it filled. It must never even go below half. It must always be full. And that's your responsibility. And be prepared. Be prepared. Those knocks are going to come. Those no's are going to come. The disappointments are going to come. And, if you can't recover from those, you can't even celebrate the victories. You can't be grateful for the good things if you can't be grateful for the bad things. Because they're lessons. They probably the best things that happen to you in your life.
Excellent. So that's fantastic. If I can summarize, knowledge. Get the skills, the knowledge. If you want to be on the coal side of the equation, the renewable side of the equation, there's solutions or needed in both. Knowledge. Show up. How you show up is important. I mean, that was a very real example you shared. And I like that because majority of the folks will say, I'm not going to take notes. I'm not a secretary. I've got 1 or 2 degrees, whereas you see that as an opportunity and you seize that opportunity and it took you somewhere. So how you show up, almost like also seizing that opportunity in showing up. And the third one, fill your cup. Make sure you're recharging and reloading at the end of every day to take on this cruel world again tomorrow. I like that. Good advice for the youngsters out there.
I call the word cruel not from a negative perspective, from a positive perspective. Our environment, the things around us, they test us continuously. That is what we're here for, to live this one life we've been given to the best of our abilities. So we must welcome, all of the things that get thrown at us.
Now, the one thing we share many similarities. We both took the leap out of the comfort of salaries, right, to start our own things, as Steve Jobs calls us, the crazy ones who do things like that. Yeah.
Yep.
But the world needs crazies. And again, so the audience that watch this podcast are both the aspirant corporate leaders, because I've had 20 years of that. You've had similar, and how to get up there to the executive board chair, the table, but also those founders and wannabe founders and entrepreneurs that want to. And I encourage that as well, because those are the future employers. This is how we're going to help address this unemployment, problem in the country. So we need successful entrepreneurs that employ people.
Yeah.
So in taking that leap, and so when you're not chairing Sania, you're the founder of Trenex. First, tell the folks what's Trenex about.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
it's an acronym, right?
Yeah, it's an acronym. It stands for Transforming Energy with Excellence.
Okay.
And it's a business that I founded with some like-minded colleagues. And the thinking behind this business is, after having spent many years in the energy sector, I know we have value to add. And we have value to add in synergizing the partnerships that we have with global multinationals, in synergizing the partnerships that we have with big business, but carving out something for smaller upcoming enterprises to be able to thrive in. So it's not a business that's going to run without adding value. So where do we want to add value? We're looking at entering the space of operations, maintenance, project development, maybe not physical construction, but the monitoring and management of construction, implementing projects, etc., through using South Africans, the knowledge that South Africans bring to the table, but also then giving back to the next generation, bringing them into the fold, developing and growing them, so that one day when you're not in the business, it still lasts, because there's continuity and longevity in what you're doing. So there's opportunities. I think the energy sector is one of the growing sectors. It is challenging, and there's many established players, but I think there is definitely a role for empowered South Africans, passionate and enthusiastic South Africans to come into the business. So we want to get into the hardcore workings and operations of the energy sector, looking at renewable energy plant, looking at the non-renewable space as well, because I think that the services and the knowledge and expertise that we can offer cut across the board. We want to take accountability for what we do. So if we have to take equity positions, if we have to take some risk and invest in what we invest in ourselves, bank ourselves in these projects, that is definitely something that we're also willing to do. So yes, we putting all these blocks, these building blocks together. I'm busy with a lot of other colleagues putting these building blocks together so that we can put a very sound model that will serve the energy sector well.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, exciting work.
Yeah.
Also, it builds on what you were doing at GIB Power, right? Were you a director at?
Yes, I worked at GIB Power as a managing director, establishing consulting engineering business in partnership with one of the global multinationals.
That's Electricité de France, is it?
Yeah.
EDF.
Yeah, but EDF International.
Okay, right, brilliant. Now, what interests me about that is you had global capital meeting African projects, and I've been playing in that space as well in my career. What for you stands out as what the holders of capital, international global capital, misunderstand or misinterpret about Africa and Africa infrastructure investment?
I'm going to have to narrow down my thought here, otherwise we're going to be doing this interview for the whole day. For me, I think what they misunderstand is that the reason we may not be undertaking investments is not because we can't mentally or physically. It's because we may not have all the tools and experience that they have, having had, the developed country advantage. That's what we're looking to partner on. We don't necessarily want to be directed and controlled. I think we want to work synergistically. And when you work in Africa, you must make sure that you take the profits. We know you're going to take it because you've invested in it, but that you leave behind something that is sustainable. You leave skills, you leave resources, you leave whole people. You've done business in our country, as we do business in our country with our laws. You've respected our traditions, you've respected our culture, and then we can have a partnership. And we must give you the same back. This is not a one-sided relationship. For your interest and investment in the country, we must give it back. But we can't do it as lesser. We must do it as equals. And that's the way in which these partnerships will operate ideally. Money does not, the fact that you bring the money in doesn't lessen what is required to build what the country that you're working in. I think for me, that's very important. I think a true test for foreign companies would be in project number 2, can you just become the equity provider? Have you left behind enough of skills, of knowledge, of expertise that you can rely on the team from project 1 to do project 2? Right. For me, that's the test.
Sustainable investing.
Sustainable investing, growing the country that you have come to invest in.
That's an interesting way to see if you're an international investor, how are you going to do this such that you already have a pipeline of projects in mind? So project 1 is almost a setup phase.
Yes.
Isn't it?
And the capacity that you build in project 1 is transferable and sustainable and something that can grow to project 2, 3, 4, and hopefully many, many.
Great stuff. Now, Kiren, you also coach WITS MBA students.
I'm not at present, but I have in the past.
You have in the past, okay. What's the one piece of advice you find yourself often repeating with these MBA students?
So I think the one piece of advice, for any studies is, and of course, my coaching with the MBA students has been when they start their dissertations or their project reports. Well, I think it's dissertations now. And, we always have a tough choice. You passionately done the studying and now you just got to complete this report, right? So do you really choose something you're passionate about or not? And I think you should give yourself a break irrespective of the choice you made. Life is a reality. My passion may be to study X. It's going to take me 20 years to do it, but I need to complete my MBA. I've got timelines, I've got a family, I've got a job, etc. So you don't always get to choose that wonderful aspirational thing that you want to study. Sometimes you have to hone in on where you can add value. It may not 100% be your passion, but then if you choose it, do it with vigor. Do it with honor and commitment so that you produce a good outcome. But I don't think there's shame in my dissertation is not my heart's desire and passion. My dissertation may be something that I feel could fill a little gap, be helpful, but I can complete it on time and I can get it done and I can honor the decision I took to study.
Love that. Is that the EX in Trenex, excellence?
Yes.
Always be excellent is one of...
And it's a practical excellence. Excellence is, we always write the word excellence as a lofty ambition. It's not, we're having this conversation, I must put my best foot forward in this conversation. That is excellence, You drive, you're going to drive back from here, focusing on the road, being cognizant of what is around you. That is excellence. It's not this lofty ambition sitting somewhere that we can't get it. It's about in every moment making the best choices, the right choices, applying your mind to what you're doing.
Absolutely. I have up on my home office, always be excellent. It's a nice reminder in everything you do. Even in me writing this note right now, it's be excellent. For the next generation, right? If African leaders or aspirant leaders remembers only one thing today from Kiren Maharaj, what will that be?
Well, hopefully they'll remember a lot. Uh,
What's the one that you want to leave them with?
so the one thing that I want to leave them with is that uh, life is fueled by passions, you know, and sometimes we get down and depressed and things are not working the way we want them to, and that happens very often actually, because everything is not perfect. And perfection is also maybe not an appropriate ambition. You must get things as right as you can. But for me, I think that if you do something, do it with passion. Do it because it's the best place that you can be at that point in time. To be in the place you want to takes a lot of courage. It doesn't always happen easily. You have to make sacrifices. You sacrifice the salary, and that if you don't want to do it, it's fine. It's not. That's not where every one of us don't land up in the same place. The world is made up of different elements for it to all work together. So we're not all going to land up in the same place. But wherever you are, be there with passion. Be there with presence.
Yeah.
Be there with your whole self.
Okay, excellent. Last one in closing. Now, if you had in Kiren's diary, because I thought back to 2010 when we hosted the FIFA World Cup. It was a great time of the year, and we were going through some difficult times at Eskom, or it was positive still at that time, right? But when Spain won in 2010 versus Spain winning the World Cup now, that 16-year gap, what would the entry in 2010 say in your diary versus now?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't kind of do a diary, but let me just reflect a moment here. So the first statement would be Viva Svania. I mean, Spain was my team from the beginning of the World Cup, and I was so glad to see them win. And there's a lot of lessons in the Spain victory, as well. But I think my diary entry in 2010 would have been, we have shown that we can do it. Despite all the doubts, the naysayers, the challenges, and we were at Eskom at the time. We worked really hard to make sure the lights, with load shedding happened in 2008, so we were tarnished by that reputation. We worked very hard to make sure that the lights stay on during the World Cup, and they did. We made our transport systems ran. We had water. Yeah. That would also have been in the diary, maybe today, but we had everything in place. We delivered a successful World Cup. We showed the world we could. And that was, I think we rode the wave of that success for years. So I would have written that. I know I would have written that.
Best month of my life.
Best month of most of our lives.
Yeah.
We did it. And I was blessed that I could see those matches and, kind of thing. We were all blessed with that. The spirit in South Africa, that's another thing I would have written about. Sport has united us in this country in a way that is unbelievable. The World Cup was a start. Rugby, I mean, we are the gods of rugby, right?
Going for the treble.
Absolutely. So those are some of the things I definitely would have reflected on. But it really gave us courage. It gave us a high. Today, if I'm going to write it, obviously I celebrate Spain's victory. I just honor the fact that they won the World Cup. But I'm going to be writing today, why do we not sustain the ability to implement? We are suffering in this country because we don't implement. So why are we not, what lessons have we not taken forward, from implementing? Why can we not fix all the infrastructure problems that we have? Where's the bottlenecks? We cannot pick up a newspaper without reading about corruption and theft, and somebody took this and somebody is doing this and that kind of thing. Why is all that necessary? Why can we not be that country that the world saw in 16 years ago?
Nice one. I think the water equivalent of Sania needs you, Kiren, because that's our next.
There is one.
Is there one?
I'm
Well,
not sure.
There's a gap here.
Maybe there is a gap to start a water association. I know there's some lobby groups, understandably so.
Yeah.
It's a big challenge. There's no, yeah, you can make a plan. You can light a fire outside if you need to cook, as a worst case. But water, huge challenge.
Huge. No, I'm making a note. It's probably my next, another episode will be about
you also
water.
come from the water sector.
Yeah. More on the mining side. Water use licenses, another story. But Kiren, thank you very much. This has been fantastic. I wish you everything of the best at Sania and with the symposium coming up. I'm going to check my calendar, hope to be there and support all the way.
Great. Much appreciated. And I hope that I've left at least one or two thoughts behind for your audience, given them something to reflect about.
More than enough. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Cheers. If you've made it all the way here, you're exactly who I made this for. Do me one favor, please. Subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation. It's absolutely free. It'll take a second and it'll mean the world to me. I'll see you in the next episode of Dealmaker Diary.